Welcome to Dreams and Myth. While there is still disagreement about the importance of dreams, many still subscribe to the idea that because it's during REM state, a necessary state for the function of the body and brain, that dreams are of import. For Carl Jung, myths and dreams are the primary pathway to self-realization because they allow human beings to understand and relate to parts of their psyches that would otherwise be inaccessible to them. Jung held a belief in reaching the transcendent, primordial image housed beneath Freud's unconscious. Jung also believed that the foundation of our personality consists of several discrete perspectives or archetypes that present themselves depending on the environment. He also suggested that these motifs manifest themselves in a particular pattern in each person's unconscious. He called this pattern the process of individuation. I would argue that teasing out that particular pattern is the process of individuation. In either case, the primary archetype is the self. It would seem that through dream symbolism one can recognize the primordial understandings that impact the shadow, anima, animus, or other archetype to present itself for review. The act of review, in and of itself, is an act of individuation, or at least a part of that process. Getting back to it, the archetype is a tendency to form such representations of a motif, representations that can vary a great deal in detail without losing their basic pattern. At this point, the text goes into instinctive trends versus archetypes. Tricky to differentiate. At our most in-depth, we will be looking at one or two dreams at a time. Reviewing the motifs on page 612 may provide you with some ideas with regards to motifs you may find in readings. In this case, all of these dreams were preparation for death expressed through short stories. We then get the argument for the shared unconscious. Such experiences seem to show that archetypal forms are not just static patterns, and a shared unconscious is also synonymous with a primordial image in some circles. Dream interpretation could be tied to the first storytellers. Men already took the view that myth was all too improbable to mean what it said. They therefore tried to reduce it to a generally understandable form. Of course, it wasn't immediately evident that dreams weren't prophecy or a message from the gods. It became clear that one can explain and know only if one has reduced intuitions to an exact knowledge of facts and their logical connections. Dream symbols are often so subtle and complicated that one cannot be sure of their interpretation. So why even do it? Well, it can be a useful evaluative exercise in determining which aspects of the self are acceptable, or are areas of opportunity for improvement. Though again, oversimplifying through duality should be cautioned. Duality is, for lack of a better term, a starting point from where we can begin to tease out a more complete understanding. As with the Grail literature, for instance, we can see the ways in which women are stifled in some respects and stimulated in others through very real people embracing the dichotomies rather than using them as a means to express the main point, thesis, or structure. This understanding, then, brings us to the anima, or the woman within. The anima, or woman within, is a dream representation of the self with a gender reversal. This is called the animus for women, who would be personified as masculine in the dream state. The anima and animus appear after the shadow and often express characteristics of the mother or father, respectively. In myth, one can see subtle manifestations of these parts of self. One example of a negative anima appears in some fairy tales in the form of a princess. This princess asks her suitors to answer a series of riddles or perhaps to hide themselves under her nose. If they cannot give the answers, or if she can find them, they must die, and she invariably wins. The anima in this guise involves men in a destructive mental game. The anima, for all its difficulties, can put a man's mind in tune with the right inner values and thereby opening the way to a more profound depths. Now let's review the 4 stages of the anima. Purely instinctual and biological. A good representation of that would be Eve. Romantic and aesthetic, like Faust's Helen. Spiritual, like the Virgin Mary. Pure wisdom, like Sapientia. Now let's review the 4 stages of the animus. Wholly physical man, like Tarzan. Romantic man, as in Indiana Jones. Orator or bearer of the word, Ronald Reagan or John F. Kennedy. Wise guide to spiritual truth, like Mahatma Gandhi. Just as capacity for language is both learned and ingrained, so too are mythological motifs and symbolic imagery. Because they are so deeply rooted, according to Jung, evaluating them through myth can be helpful at unmasking and confronting them. Be wary of generic or stock characters with little development. They can be confused for an archetype. Review the literature about performing a Jungian analysis.